Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be another Canadian Soldier Reacts video, and today we're looking at the modern 75th Ranger Rifle Squad loadout. Now, for those of you who have been to the channel before, you'll know that I'm a former Canadian soldier. I was a member of the 1st Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment from 1987 to 1998, and at the time, 1RCR was part of Ace Mobile Force and an SSF battalion, one of the few in the Canadian Forces at the time. So let's take a look at it.
The Rangers are among the U.S. Army's most famous formations with unique characteristics that set them apart from other American Special Operations Forces.
Okay, first of all, looking at this looks like a C7 GPMG, although the optics on top are a little bit interesting because I don't remember us ever using optics. So I started out in the era of 7.62 weaponry. So the C1, the C2, and the C5, which would have been our assault rifle, our squad automatic weapon, and our heavy machine gun. Wow, medium machine gun. All were 7.62 caliber. And then we moved into the C7s and C8s. The C6s, C7s, and C8s, which C6 would have been our GPMG. Still 7.62, which this looks very similar to. The C7 would have been the assault rifle. We had the C7A1s, which had a fixed butt stock, but they've gone to the C7A2s now, which have a telescoping buttstock. And then the C8s, which would have been the carbine version, which had a telescoping buttstock, but also had a much shorter barrel. Those were used mostly by SIGs and people who wouldn't be expected to be prosecuting a section attack, basically. But looks like very similar kit, with the exception of the optics.
Forces, namely the mass of an
So that looks like a 60 millimeter mortar. Every rifle platoon would have had, I believe, 2 of those.
infantry unit. The overall purpose of the regiment is to provide a rapid reaction airborne infantry force anywhere in the world, with more.
Well, that's pretty much exactly what we did too. Now, we weren't airborne, we were air mobile, which means we wouldn't have jumped out of the aircraft. The aircraft would have landed, or we would have repelled out of the aircraft, or possibly fast rope in later years.
More precision and discrimination than a conventional light infantry unit. Cold War doctrine characterized it as.
Yeah, light infantry unit is a bit of a misnomer. All it means is that they walk everywhere. But to be honest, the stuff that they carry is a lot heavier than if you actually had transportation.
Conventional techniques combined with special skills. They're suited for direct action, which essentially means limited offensive actions in politically sensitive or hostile environments. Each Ranger
that's an
battalion
interesting
has
interpretation.
basically 9 rifle platoons, plus support and more specialized.
All right, so in 1RCR, we would have had 9 rifle platoons, technically, but they would have been split into 3 rifle companies, or at least when we first got there. So there would have been Dukes, Bravo, and Charles. And then right around the time we moved to Petawawa, we stood up Delta Company. So we actually had 4 rifle companies, each consisting of 3 rifle platoons and a headquarters platoon. And that headquarters platoon would have had a heavy weapons section and a couple of other things attached to it. Now, looking up here, Recce, yeah, absolutely had Recce. In fact, I'm reconnaissance qualified. I'm mortar qualified. Snipers would have been attached to the Recce platoon. Dogs, that's really interesting. We had no dogs. Enhanced breachers, that would have been our pioneer platoon. Our pioneer platoon was essentially a combat engineer platoon light. They didn't, and I were actually combat engineer qualified. Or excuse me, Yeah, combat engineer qualified, pioneer qualified. I passed the pioneer course. We would have been trained. We were trained to construct and to demolish. So we were trained in a lot of different types of explosives. Strikers now, it would have depended on how we were deployed. So we were classed as a mechanized infantry. So we could have taken our armored fighting vehicles in, which would have, when I was there, was the Grizzly. But it's basically a LAV. It looks very similar to the Striker, actually. And the current one also has a 25 millimeter main gun with a 7.62 coaxial mounted. Very similar to the Striker. Every single rifle section would have had one of those. So there would have been three per rifle, actually four per rifle platoon, because the headquarters section would have had the same thing. So there would have been 4 times 9, so 36, plus some extra ones for different things. We would have had a lot of those. And then signal detection, well, we had a signals platoon, and then each company had their own signals. So, each company had their own signals. In fact, each platoon had their own signals, sort of. So, to be honest, I mean, in the end, with the exception of the dogs, very similar makeup with us and the Ranger Battalion here.
Teams, and a single Ranger platoon can be independently deployed to work under JSOC, sometimes in a different country from the rest of their battalion.
Our platoons would often get deployed separately, but not that far. Like when we were on peacekeeping duties, it wasn't uncommon for a platoon house to be 2 hours north or so. Well, I mean, 2 hours away from where the rest of the company was stationed, all off on their own and working independently, but generally not deployed under command of another unit or organization.
One extreme explained to me by a ranger was when his platoon was deployed to Syria, the rest of his company was in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that
The
doesn't
current gen
normally happen with
Rangers
us.
have always been similar to conventional infantry. The rifle squad includes a squad leader ranking staff sergeant.
Okay, so this is interesting. So in Canada, the section commander is is either a sergeant with 3 stripes, or more practically, it's a master corporal with 2 stripes and a leaf. I was a master corporal. So the TO&E states it should be a sergeant, but under normal conditions, it's far more likely that it's going to be a master corporal who's in charge of the section. And the section would have been 10 men split into 2 halves. And the section commander, if they split up, or even in the section attack, the section commander would command one side, and the section 2IC or second in command would command the other side based on the section commander's orders.
An Alpha team and a Bravo team. The fire teams each consist of 4 soldiers on paper, although in practice they're often under strength. The Rangers have
ours consisted, like I said, of 10 on paper, but we were often under strength also.
Additional manpower limitations.
In fact, almost
their
always.
Members have to go through Ranger Selection, Airborne School, and Ranger School. Rangers can also be released for standards once at the regiment for almost any reason, such as not meeting physical standards, lack of motivation, committing a crime, failing Ranger School, or just being a bad...
So, with the exception of failing Ranger School, because we didn't have that, all of those things would have gotten you kicked out, and not just of the unit, just kicked out.
Bad person. So operating 2-man teams is something that happens. But in theory, each team has a team leader, automatic...
Yeah, we often didn't get down to 2-man teams. We would generally, like, the worst I think I ever saw, well, maybe I did see 6 from time to time, but generally it was closer to 8, and often it was closer to 10.
Rifleman, Grenadier, and Rifleman.
Okay, so here, this is really interesting. So, this, like I said, would have been a sergeant, a 3-stripe sergeant. So, a three-stripe sergeant in Canada is equivalent to a four-stripe sergeant in the United States. A master corporal in Canada is equivalent to a three-stripe sergeant in the United States. Now, we would not have had two. So like I said, if this could have been sergeant and a master corporal, there never would have been two master corporals in a section. More likely, it would have been a master corporal and a corporal as the second team leader. So the master corporal would have taken direct command of the first team, and then his 2IC, more likely a corporal, would have taken command of the second team. We definitely had two automatic riflemen. They would have carried the squad automatic weapon, so that would have been the C9. Yeah, the C9, which is very similar to the American SAW 5.56 belt-fed. We definitely would have had a grenadier. The grenadier would have had an undermounted 40 millimeter, I think it's a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, and then you would have had your basic rifleman on that. So all in all, with the exception of kind of a little bit heavy on the leadership here, very, very similar.
Team leaders are ideally sergeants, and both the team leader and the automatic rifleman in their doctrinal capacity as assistant team leader need ranger tabs. The distinction between the scroll and the tab is those who pass the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, or RASP, earn their beret and scroll and become members of the 75th Ranger Regiment. Ranger School, on the other hand, is a leadership school and suckfest with a basis in infantry skills.
Okay, so just the way he just said that, I mean, like I said, I know a bunch of guys who have the yellow tab here. I've never seen this lower tab. I don't know what that is. Or maybe I have seen it and I just haven't noticed it. This is the one that was walking around my unit. But the way he described this as leadership and school and suckfest, that sounds like our 6A. That's what a lot of guys would have described it.
Anyone can go to Ranger School to earn their Ranger tab and become Ranger qualified, and in fact, it's de facto necessary for all active duty infantry officers provided they want a career. But while it's completely separate from the Ranger Regiment, junior enlisted Rangers who haven't yet passed Ranger School are considered privates regardless of rank, even if they're a specialist, and if they don't go within a certain time frame, they get kicked out of the regiment. So all leadership, particularly in...
Well, then why wouldn't you just go immediately? Like, the first thing I would do would be to go. I mean, if they let me. In Canada, the way that you're picked for training of that nature is, first of all, you have to show the aptitude. So basically, you have to get recommended to go, and then you have to accept that. And if you don't accept that, then you're not long for anything meaningful. In fact, you're probably on your way out. You don't really turn down training in the RCR.
In combat roles have Ranger tabs, even though it isn't training specific to the 75th Rangers. As far as weapons, most are armed with M4A1 carbines equipped with the Upper Receiver Group Improved, or URGI.
Okay, so...
it includes new...
There we go. Okay, so this looks very similar, well, with the exception of this. And the optics, I don't know about the optics. We had just a 3-power scope, but this looks very similar to the C7A2 with the telescoping stock. And it's got the longer barrel, but all we had was a flash suppressor here. This looks like some sort of a noise suppressor. We didn't have anything like that. And then this looks very similar to the C8 carbine, because not only does it have this telescoping stock, but it also has the shorter barrel. This only would have been used by signals. No, it wouldn't even have been drivers. Like, very few people would have gotten this C8 in the RCR. And it would have been for specific reasons. The vast majority of the people were expected to be able to prosecute section attacks, and that's what this weapon is for. Period.
New cold-forged barrels in 14.5 and 11.5 inch and an M-Lock handguard interface to replace the Riz-2 quad
God,
rail.
you guys have a lot of names for these
Fire team
things.
leaders are priority for the shorties because they're normally at the head of a formation, would be the first to take contact, and would lead the squad through breaches and into field works. But squad leaders and officers...
Yeah, that... Interesting. I'd want the longer one. Oops, sorry about that.
Officers can lay down dibs to get one as well, although the sentiment expressed
Lay
to
down
me is they
dibs?
don't need one. If for some reason a ranger is carrying a second weapon, like a DMR and a rifle, they'd probably take a shorty. Carl Gustav gunners are theoretically meant to get
hold
one.
on. Oh, I thought he was pointing backwards for a second. That's your backblast guy. So we also carried the Carl Gustav. There would have been, I believe one Carl Gustav per platoon in the platoon heavy weapons det, I believe. And it looks like this guy's carrying that. That looks very much like a radio antenna here, just folded down. These were very common. Everyone was qualified in a Carl G in our unit.
But because they're usually pretty junior members of the platoon, they're often stuck with the longer carbine. Medics and forward observers
Often stuck with the longer carbine. I'd want the longer. Why would you not want the longer one? Okay, it's heavier, but that has no bearing. It's more effective. Okay, that makes no sense to me.
are also likely to get one, but there's a limited supply per company, between 30 and 40, out of over 120 people, including 18 fire.
Yeah, we had a limited supply also, but that was on purpose. It was based on your job description and whether you needed the shorter barrel or not. The shorter barrel is going to mean less accuracy at longer ranges. And there's only really two advantages to the shorter barrel. One is that obviously it's lighter, and two is that you can swing it around a little bit easier in close combat or in fighting in built-up areas, that kind of a thing. Other than that, everybody I know would want the longer one.
Team leaders. Rifles are usually paired with surefire suppressors, which in addition to audible benefits,
that's nice.
suppress the muzzle flash, particularly handy during night operations. A variety of optics are in use. Common ones that have been spotted in 2023 include the EOTech EXPS 3-0,
Oh my God.
the Vortex Razor 1 to 6 times low power variable optic, and the Aimpoint Micro T2.
So, I mean, it's interesting that they have a lot of optics choices. I'm not sure that they need all of those choices, especially for infantry. I mean, if you've got specialized roles and you need a sniper, but I mean, our guys were firing at 500-600 meters with a 3-power battle scope. I mean, it's a 3-power sight because it's got a reasonably large field of view for a 3-power. But it was still a scope, right? If you're going to be the sniper det would have fired out longer than that, and the sniper det I think would have had somewhere between a 12 and a 20 power. I can't remember exactly. I was recce qualified, and I was top shot in my battalion on more than one occasion, but I was not sniper qualified. But I find the variety of optics a little bit interesting for an infantry battalion.
The 7.62 SCAR H, designated Mark 17 in SOCOM service, is also in use, although it's less prevalent than the M4A.
So that's interesting. I mean, if the size of this is to be believed, it's shorter than the 5.56. I'd be interested to understand the role of that weapon specifically. I know the reasoning that they went to the 5.56 Granted, when we went to the 5.56, everybody in my battalion wanted the 7.62s back, even though it was like 4 pounds heavier or something silly like that. We all wanted to go back to the 7.62, but the reasoning for the 5.56 is actually pretty sound. You hit somebody with a 5.56, you're less likely to kill them, and that's going to take 3 people off the battlefield at least for a period of time. Whereas if you kill them, then they're just left, and it takes 1 person off the battlefield. Sure, whatever. Having the extra stopping power of the 7.62, especially with a shorter barrel, I'd be interested to know what the weapon's role would be.
One. I've been told it's usually used as an impromptu designated marksman rifle by squad and team leaders, but...
Well, so the bullet is definitely capable of going further, and it's going to have a reasonable level of accuracy, at least out to, say, 800 meters, I would expect. I haven't fired this one specifically. The barrel on the C1 was significantly longer than this. So, I mean, I guess in a pinch, sure.
Most fall back on their familiarity with the AR platform. Word on the street is the Rangers don't really like the new M110A1 SDMRs that much, and normally stick with the Mark 17 as a DMR. Grenadiers also carry the M320 40mm grenade launcher in the...
So ours would have been, it's an M203, I believe it was, an undermounted grenade launcher. It would have sat right here.
Standalone configuration, which enables it to be holstered when not in use.
Meh.
The automatic rifleman uses the M249 LMG. The Rangers did at one point use the Mark 46, which was the SOCOM specific upgrade of the M2.
Yeah, so I don't know the difference between those two weapons. Ours looked very similar. Actually, no, that looks like 7.62. That does not look like 5.56 to me. So we had a 5.56 belt fed, looked reasonably similar to this.
M249 adopted in the early 2000s, but the M249 was upgraded by the regular army and the Rangers went back to it. The Mark 48, which is the 7.62 version of the Mini-Me, can also be used by the automatic rifleman, although I'll talk more about it once I get to the weapons squad.
Yeah, again, you're going to have differing roles for these things. Our 7.62 was the C6. And it was significantly longer, significantly heavier, and hit significantly harder. It's got a different role than a section squad automatic weapon.
The Knights Armament Company LAMG is also now in the Ranger inventory for evaluation. Its selling point is lighter weight when compared to the M249, and controllability achieved via a constant recoil system.
I'm not really a big fan of multiple types of weapons
hasn't replaced the M249
unless there's a specific
and is currently
need.
serving alongside it. All Rangers in the squad also have the option of carrying a sidearm. Because the Rangers are an organization of both the U.S. Army...
So only the Section Commander and 2IC got a 10mm sidearm.
And SOCOM, they received both the Army's standard pistol, now the M17, but formerly the M9 Beretta, and SOCOM's.
Ours was the Browning 9mm. It was not the most reliable weapon.
Mark 27, a version of the Glock 19. Back in the Beretta days, those basically stayed in armory, and the Glock is what was used.
Looked a little bit like that.
But I'm told now with the M17 coming in, some guys are transferring to them, but a lot are sticking with the Glock 2. But in practice...
See, we didn't get choices of that nature. We carried what we were told to carry.
Despite being an issued item, they're normally only taken out on missions by belt-fed gunners. Unlike the regular army, this includes M249 gunners. In normal rifle platoons, normally only M240 gunners take them.
Yeah,
depending on the unit, there can be an anti-pistol culture, mainly because of the high risk of them being lost out in the field.
Oh, yes.
Privates especially would probably not carry a pistol.
Oh, actually, yeah. So everybody who had a pistol that I knew of actually had it physically tied to their body. Like when I was carrying mine, it was actually in my chest here in my low-bearing vest. I actually took one of my mag pouches, I put it in one of my lower pockets, and I put the pistol here, and then I used the the flap of the mag pouch and I velcroed it down. But I also had a cord that was tied onto the pistol, and it was actually tied onto, I think it was tied over here. It was either on my hip or over here. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, no, actually, so yeah, when I had it up here, it was tied up here, but when I had to wear the holster, it was tied down there. And then it was knotted in such a way that the cord was very compact. But when you take it out and you pulled on it, it would unravel without any problems. And everyone had some sort of a system like that because everybody was scared to death of losing them. M72s, I think there were 2 of those carried per section. Yeah. Carl G was 1 per platoon, and the M72s, I think, were 2 per section.
In addition to the personal weapons, the new
Oh.
thermobaric, heat, and HE dual-purpose
backblast
variants of
again.
the M72 light anti-tank weapon are in service with the Rangers. Unlike in the big army, where AT-4s are common, the lighter M72 is more prolific in the Rangers. I've been told by late 2010s Rangers that they never actually saw an AT-4 in the regiment. Although a more recent serving vet told me that the AT-4s are used sometimes, but less favored due to their bulk, a less sensitive fuse leading to a higher dud rate, and worse effects against personnel in buildings due
Never
to the
even
lack
seen them.
of a thermobaric version. Although this is probably influenced by the lack of an armor threat in most Ranger missions, and if they were conducting a raid against a peer...
That would more likely be a Carl G with us. Oh, that's the new, is it a Javelin, I think that is? These things I hear are pretty expensive.
enemy,
but
they'd
effective.
probably take out AT-4s and Javelins for the better anti-armor capability. But the M72 love leads to such decadent images as this Ranger with an aiming laser on their M72 for aiming under night vision. Who should carry the M72s is most likely preference, since the newest guys will be carrying stuff like the aid and litter and equipment for detaining individuals during raids.
Everyone
the team
had the
leaders are
cuffs.
primary breachers with a hoolie tool, bolt cutters, and a pistol grip Remington 870.
Yeah, we didn't have those kinds of things normally. We'd brute force down doors if we needed to, but that would only be if we were doing Fibua. And at that point, yeah, we might actually be even carrying sledgehammers and things of that nature.
With a 3-round tube magazine. One veteran from 3rd Battalion told me in his case, the squad leader carried the laws. Each platoon has 3 rifle squads and a weapons squad. Weapons includes a squad leader, the platoon's senior staff sergeant, and 3 gun teams as the base. In practice, a Carl Gustav recoilless rifle team is also incorporated. At one point...
Yeah, these gun teams, so there would have been 1 GPMG per platoon. There would have been a Carl G per platoon. There would have been, I think, 2 60mm mortars per platoon. 1 or 2, I can't remember. I'm missing a few things. There's the fire teams, the fire base guys, they carried a lot of stuff, actually.
The Carl Gustav, or Goose, was administratively held...
So, I've never heard it called a Goose in my life. It's a Carl G.
...as a section at the company level, but it has since been made an organic part of each weapons squad. A support by fire will normally initiate with a shot from the Goose, followed by a mad minute with the guns. The anti-tank team leader is normally a sergeant and would be an assistant to the weapons squad leader.
So I'm going to question what he's saying there. I'm thinking he might be a civilian who just doesn't know what he's talking about, because that doesn't sound right to me.
The gun teams typically consist of 2 men. A gun team leader, who I'm told is normally a tabbed corporal, although I'm guessing that may vary between companies, and a gunner who's junior. The primary system is the M240 Lima, particularly in cases where a tripod...
Yeah, that would have been closer to the C6 that our guys would have used. And I think there were only 2 of them per rifle platoon.
...is needed for sustained and long-range fire. But if mobility is more important, or a gun team needs to go down to 1 man, the more portable Mark 48 can be employed as well. If the gun team still has 2 members, the private acts as ammo bearer in that case. One
Private
case
always
of a
acts as ammo
one-man
bearer.
Mark 48 team would be when strikers are employed, which eats up gun team personnel to man the vehicles.
Yeah.
Other heavy weapons, such as the Mark 47 automatic grenade launcher,
We
are
didn't
also
have those, but
available
those
in the
look
arms
great.
room, but employed by the weapon squads or mounted on the ground mobility vehicles. Above the squads, the platoon HQ includes the platoon leader, platoon sergeant, 2 attached medics, at least 1 radio operator.
So this is interesting. So the platoon leader in general would have been a first lieutenant, a lieutenant, or a second lieutenant. Captain generally only would have been commanding one of the combat support platoons, such as Recce platoon or mortars platoon or pioneer platoon or something like that. Or a captain would have been the company 2IC, second in command. Now, what you're calling the platoon sergeant here, we would have called the platoon warrant officer. And according to the ORBAT, it's supposed to be a warrant officer, which would be generally equivalent to a 5-stripe sergeant here. But more in practice, it would have been a Canadian sergeant, which would have been equivalent to a 4-stripe sergeant. Again, this is because we generally never had the higher level ranks that we needed. Now, as far as medics go, maybe a master corporal, far more likely a corporal would be attached, and we would only get 1. We wouldn't get 2. We definitely would have had a radio operator. That could have been a private or a corporal.
For the PL, and possibly a second for the platoon sergeant if they can spare. Unlike in the regular infantry, second lieutenants are ineligible to join the regiment, so the PL will either be a first lieutenant or even a captain. Ideally, a sergeant and private will be attached from the company fire support team to act.
Okay, so they weren't generally attached to platoons. So a forward observer team is a team that in our battalion it would have been used to spot for the mortars, but oftentimes they'd be able to call in artillery too, and they're far more likely to have gone out with a recce or just on their own. Or they would get attached with a rifle company just to get to the forward line of battle, and then they would very often move forward even of that. Like those guys needed to be as far forward as they could get so that they could call in effective fire. And if we're talking mortars, 81 millimeter mortars, you're only talking 3.5 to maybe 4.5 kilometer range maximum. Whereas with artillery, you're talking like 17 kilometers, I believe.
As forward observers, the sergeant is JTAC qualified. Although not part of the platoon itself, battalion-level assets such as sniper observation teams, dogs, and mortars will be aligned to each platoon and attached for deployment.
Yeah, no. Mortars would never have been aligned to a platoon. In fact, recce would never have been aligned to a platoon either. The only reason you'd see recce in a particular platoon would be if they needed to travel with us to get to some particular place where they were then, again, going to leave. They didn't want to be anywhere near the infantry platoons.
In terms of motorization, strikers are available to transport the Rangers under armor. The exact numbers are uncertain, but it's likely battalions have enough strikers to move it.
Yeah, so it's 4 vehicles per platoon, plus probably 2 or maybe 3 more for headquarters and heavy weapons det. So you're talking 14 to 16 odd per rifle company, plus a few more for battalion, and the support, the different support platoons. So, I mean, I don't know why he thinks it's unknown.
Company of infantry at once in multiple 4-truck ground assault force packages. These are manned by each rifle company's weapons squad, with the privates acting
Yeah,
as
that's true.
drivers and the gun team leaders acting as vehicle commanders. Lighter Polaris
Yeah, that's
MAs.
true. And if they can, they'll actually use the vehicle because that 25 millimeter gun and then its coax 7.62 is very effective. So I have no idea what these guys are doing here. We had an unarmored vehicle. I want to say similar to this, but it's not really similar to this. It was called an Iltis, a very small four-wheel drive Jeep type vehicle that, to be honest, wasn't terribly capable.
As used by Marine Reconnaissance and SOCOM, and in-between ground mobility vehicle 1.1s are also available for motorized
Yeah, we didn't have
transport
it.
and
Oh, that's nice. Wow. Is that a 50 cal? So we didn't have anything like this either. So the up from the Iltis would have been, well, when I first got there, it was a GMC 5/4 ton, which then got replaced by the LSVW? Light Service Vehicle Wheeled, I think. Or maybe it was the Medium Service Vehicle Wheeled. I can't remember. Canada has really great names for these things. LSVW, MLVW, HLVW. It just means light, medium, and heavy. L would stand for Logistics Vehicle Wheeled.
fighting in the latter's case. This is a remastered segment.
Okay, well, so that's it. That's the modern 75th Ranger Rifle Squad, and to be honest, it looks, well, it's not the squad, really. It was kind of the battalion, but it looks very, very similar to the way we were organized in 1RCR. A couple of, I mean, pretty striking differences, but really, as far as most of the stuff I saw here, a very similar kind of a unit and a unit makeup. So that was it, guys. You know what I might do? I might actually make a video on Canadian Forces or Canadian Infantry ranks and jobs. Because I did notice a lot of differences in the rank structure and who did what and where. So if you like the video, please leave a like down below. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a lot. I really would appreciate the subscribe. Tell your friends about me. I would love to get over that 1,000 subscribers mark, and I need your help to do it. Leave a comment if you have a comment, and I'm sure if I said something wrong, you'll let me know. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.